The sound that stopped me wasn't even a sound. It was the absence of one. No clinking dishes. No footsteps rushing to greet me. Just the faint thump of bass-heavy music from upstairs and the low, unguarded hum of her laughter, sharp, real, the kind that rises from the gut when you think no one else is listening. I hadn't planned to come home early. The dinner with the prospective marketing lead was cancelled last minute. A simple text. Food poisoning. Rain check? I took the freeway home without a second thought. The neighborhood looked the same, calm, familiar. But the white Tesla parked 2 houses down wasn't hers. And the matte gray coupe out front definitely wasn't mine. I stepped inside quietly. No lights on downstairs, just the echo of that laugh again, clearer now. Not strained or guilty. Delighted. On the kitchen counter sat 2 glasses, both still half full. One had her lipstick on the rim, deep plum, the shade she only wore when she wanted to feel powerful. The other had none, but I could see the faint smudge of a fingerprint on the stem. Not mine. I hadn't touched red in weeks. We'd both stopped pretending to toast things. Her purse was open on the stool. Her phone sat inside it, screen up, unlocked. She never left it unlocked. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. There are silences you don't break with questions, they answer themselves. I walked up the stairs, slow and even. Not creeping. Not dramatic. Just methodical. Like logging into a server you designed, knowing it was compromised. You don't go in to scream at the virus. You go in to verify the breach. The bedroom door was half open. I could see the edge of her reflection in the vanity mirror. Bare shoulders, hair pinned, her expression loose and unguarded mid-laugh. Then she turned and froze. His back was to me. He was still zipping up. He hadn't even bothered to button his shirt yet. But her eyes met mine first. The flash of surprise didn't linger. It slipped into something colder, composed, almost calculated. She whispered, "It's not what it looks like." I didn't move. He turned around too slowly. And there he was. Jasper Mendez. The investor she had said we needed. The one she'd pushed to bring in after the pivot. The one she swore was just results-driven. The one I shook hands with 2 weeks ago after signing away equity that she said would unlock our future. I didn't say a word. Not because I didn't want to, but because there was nothing worth salvaging in the air between us anymore. She blinked, stepping forward slightly, still holding the edge of the bedsheet like modesty meant anything now. "Let me explain, please, Jess." I turned, walked downstairs, took my keys from the bowl by the door, and left. No door slam. No dramatic lines. No backwards glance. Because some betrayals don't deserve an argument. They deserve absence. I drove for 23 minutes without realizing where I was going. When I finally pulled over, it was a dim corner lot of a gas station I hadn't visited in years. The kind of place we used to stop on road trips, back when we were still building something together. Not just a business, but the illusion that we were aligned. That our ambitions pointed in the same direction. The silence inside the car felt heavier than the betrayal. He wasn't random. That's what echoed, louder than her laugh. He wasn't some stranger. She brought him into our company. Into my house. My bed. She built this, brick by careful brick, and she did it with him in mind the entire time. Jasper wasn't just a man in the wrong place at the worst time. He was the one she'd insisted on involving from the start. The one she praised at every pitch meeting, nudged into dinners, aligned herself with on every vote. The same man who lowballed our valuation 2 months ago, and who she said was playing hardball to test our resilience. I bought that line. I defended it. I defended her. And now I realized that deal she pushed for wasn't business. It was personal before it ever got professional. I thought back to the December meeting when she first floated his name. Her voice had been steady, convincing. "He's got reach, and he believes in founders who hustle." I'd smiled, impressed. She already met him twice by then. Said she was building rapport. But now I could see the edges of it. The way she'd lit up when he emailed back quickly. How she'd laughed at his bad jokes even when we were in the middle of tense negotiation rounds. I thought it was just salesmanship. I was wrong. She'd always had a way of wrapping business in charm, of making pressure sound like persuasion. But Jasper was more than a power play. He was her escape hatch, lined up long before I even noticed the floor softening beneath us. I closed my eyes and let the full weight of it settle in. That wasn't just personal disloyalty. This was strategy. This was strategy. She used our company as cover for something deeper. She built professional credibility on the back of private betrayal. Every signature, every equity decision, every investor update. Now it all felt staged. Like I'd been nodding along to a script she'd already sold to someone else. And the worst part? I couldn't even be angry. Not in the way people expect. Rage is clean. This wasn't. This was rot. Quiet. Internal. Like discovering a leak that's been running behind the walls for months, long before the mold showed. I turned my phone over in my hands. 10 missed calls from her. 2 texts. Please! Call me. I need to explain. Don't act impulsively. This isn't what you think. She still thought this was a misunderstanding to clean up, like a PR issue. But I wasn't cleaning it up. I wasn't spiraling. I was seeing it all, finally, for what it was. Not a moment of weakness, a campaign. And I'd funded it. By the next morning, the world hadn't changed, but I had. I didn't wake up in a dramatic sweat or punch a wall like some storybook husband unraveling. I just lay there in a hotel bed 5 miles from home, watching the ceiling, listening to the muted hum of a city that didn't care. Her face kept replaying in my head, not the guilt, but the moment just after it. That flicker when she recalibrated. She wasn't shocked I caught her. She was shocked I didn't explode. That I didn't scream, didn't demand answers. Because she knew what silence meant. She knew I'd seen the whole map now. Not just the affair. The architecture beneath it. There's a difference between accidents and blueprints. This wasn't spontaneous. It had roots. Back in October, she pushed hard for restructuring. Said it was to limit liability before closing the next round. She made it sound like protection, less personal risk, tighter contracts. I'd trusted her. She handled the legal side more than I did. It was her wheelhouse. I'd focused on engineering, product, and hiring. She negotiated equity and presented investor decks. That was the balance. But now the words came back in cold clarity. If we consolidate the IP under the parent entity, it'll streamline things. Just transfer it, clean, simple. You'll still be founder and CTO, nothing changes. It was subtle, framed as strategy, and I signed off without hesitation. Now, sitting in that anonymous hotel room, I pulled up the scanned copies of those documents. I knew exactly where they were. Cloud folder, legal greater than 2024 IP_transfers. There it was. My signature, her language, and the company's core intellectual property, patents, source code, licensing rights, now all officially held by the entity she controlled with a 51% stake. She had positioned herself as majority owner 5 months ago. I just hadn't realized how intentional the moves were. I used to joke that she was the better chess player. That she thought 5 moves ahead while I lived in the next sprint cycle. The joke's over. I leaned forward, elbows on knees, phone in hand, scrolling through our past texts, the late-night Slack messages, voice notes, each one now sounding different in retrospect. What I once read as dedication, I now heard as orchestration. That wasn't just Jasper in our bed. That was the closer, the final move, the part that made it undeniable. There were no apologies in her messages. Just control. Warnings, PR instincts kicking in. Don't do anything stupid. Not. I'm sorry. Not. I made a mistake. She was managing fallout. That's all I was now, a potential crisis to contain. I sat there until checkout time, then packed my bags slowly, calmly. No drama. Just decisions. First move, contact the one person I could trust, David Klein. Our attorney. My late father's friend. The man who'd watched me build this company from a garage server rack to $1 million valuation. If she'd filed anything else, he would know. And if she hadn't yet, she would soon. I needed to be ready. David answered on the second ring. His voice was warm, familiar, but guarded. Hey, he said. You all right? I didn't waste time. I need to know if Ashley filed anything with you this week. Anything unusual. Quietly. He didn't ask why. David wasn't the kind of man who needed gossip to engage. He'd seen enough corporate implosions to recognize urgency when it called. He was silent for a moment. Then, come in. Now. His office was just off Ventura. Classic wood paneling, too many legal books, and a smell that always reminded me of deadlines and dry ink. I sat across from him as he pulled up the client directory and keyed in the company's file. She emailed me Monday, he said, turning the monitor slightly toward me. Subject line, IP realignment, authorization to file. She framed it as routine. Requested a draft amendment to shift all platform rights to a secondary holding entity under her full control. Said you'd approved it verbally and were signing later in the week. He paused. I held it. Something felt off. I nodded slowly, heart steady. You were right to. He leaned back. Does she know you know? No. I watched the cursor blink on the screen, a single flash of digital hesitation. She's still hoping I'll yell or throw something. That I'll make noise she can manage. But I'm not here to scream. David clicked to open the file trail. You want me to step in formally? Or block the filing? I shook my head. No paper trail. Not yet. He studied me for a long moment. What's your play? I exhaled slowly. Silence. Total. I'm not trying to reclaim what she took. I just want to make sure she doesn't keep taking. He nodded once. I'll put a hold flag on any structural changes. She'll get a bounce notice if she tries to push anything through. Quietly, I said. David gave a half smile, the kind only a man in his 60s can pull off with dignity. You know how many men walk in here wanting revenge? Fury makes them sloppy. You, he gestured at me. You're surgical. I didn't feel proud of that, but I appreciated the accuracy. As I left his office, the California sun burned too bright for the mood I was in. It made the whole world look wrong, like everything outside should have cracked with me, but nothing had. I sat in my car and opened her messages again. 14 unread texts now. A missed call from Jasper. They still thought they were the center of the drama, that I'd orbit them in anger. But I wasn't circling. I was leaving gravity, quietly, with records, with clarity, because I'd already learned something they hadn't yet. Noise is an invitation, silence is a sentence, and I had no intention of breaking it. By the third day, I stopped checking my phone. It wasn't discipline, it was clarity. Every new message was another loop in the same performance, please dressed as explanations, half confessions padded in careful language, emotional bait without substance. I didn't bite. Instead, I went back through my calendar. Every meeting, every trip she insisted I take alone, every late night she needed space to work. The timeline came into focus like a jigsaw you've stared at for weeks, suddenly realizing the image had always been upside down. There'd been a business trip to Austin 3 months ago, one I took solo because she claimed someone had to hold the fort. The day I left, Jasper had come to the house for an investor strategy dinner. She texted me a photo of wine glasses and tapas, said they were discussing board structure. I'd smiled at the time, proud of her for owning the room. Now I remembered the details too clearly. The same glasses I saw in the kitchen 3 nights ago. One stained, one not. Even her laugh, sharp, unguarded, was a clue I'd heard but never decoded. She didn't laugh like that with me. Not anymore. At the time, I chalked it up to stress. Startups were hard. People get distant. It's part of the grind. But the truth was simpler. She wasn't tired. She was full, just not from us. That laugh I heard upstairs wasn't a moment of shame. It was joy. Real, relaxed, and meant for him. That's what cut the deepest. Not the physical betrayal. Not even the attempted IP theft. It was the realization that I'd been loving someone who no longer saved her joy for me, and maybe hadn't in a long time. When I walked into our office the next morning, no one looked at me differently. The team hadn't heard. Ashley hadn't said anything. The illusion was still intact. She was already seated in the glass conference room, typing on her laptop like nothing had happened. I paused just long enough for her eyes to flick up, then back down. She was pretending it was just another Wednesday, that nothing cracked, but she couldn't meet my eyes for long. I didn't go in. I just walked past, headed for the server room, pulled the drive I'd cloned last year, our complete codebase archive, and walked right back out. She texted me 2 hours later. Are you coming back to the house tonight? I stared at the message for a long time before locking the screen and sliding the phone into my drawer. Because I wasn't, and she already knew it. She just hadn't figured out how to stage her next move without my reaction. She'd built our entire dynamic on knowing which strings to pull. But now the marionette had stepped off the stage, and the quiet was starting to unnerve her. By day 5, the silence began to work, not on me, but on her. I hadn't responded once. No calls returned, no texts acknowledged. I didn't rage, accuse, or demand answers, and in that void she began to unravel. The longer I stayed quiet, the more erratic her messages became. What started as short, calculated outreach evolved into a flurry of emotion and self-correction. We need to talk. This isn't healthy. I made a mistake, but not the one you think. Can we at least discuss the company's direction? This is bigger than us. Then finally, you're being cruel. Cruel. That was the word that landed hardest. Not because it was accurate, but because it revealed everything. She'd mistaken silence for punishment, as if my calm was a weapon. But it wasn't vengeance, it was detachment. She wasn't afraid of anger. She was afraid of indifference, because her control had never been built on domination. It was built on participation, on provoking just enough reaction to keep the story moving forward, so she could steer it. When I denied her that, I wasn't being cruel. I was ending the story altogether. I drove back to the house only once, mid-afternoon when I knew she'd be at the office. The blinds were open. Everything staged in perfect normalcy. Pillows fluffed. Books stacked with fake intention. Even the wine glasses were gone from the kitchen counter. She was still managing the optics. I walked straight to the home office, pulled the drawer where we kept our shared hard copies, corporate filings, equity schedules, early investment agreements. Everything was there. I scanned what I needed and left the originals. Upstairs, I hesitated outside the bedroom door. Not out of emotion, out of instinct. It looked the same. Sheets tucked tight, candles on the dresser, that scent she used to spray to make the room feel expensive. I stood there, breathing it in, letting the falseness of it all settle into my bones. Then I left. No note, no trace. Just one more moment denied to her narrative. That night, I booked a private appointment with a financial advisor who'd worked with us in the early days. Told him I needed to open a personal account. Explained the shift in tone between me and my co-founder. He nodded once and began the paperwork. I could see the questions in his eyes, but he didn't ask them. That's the benefit of dealing with quiet professionals. They don't need the full story, they just recognize when the stakes have changed. By the end of the hour, I'd secured my accounts, separated what I legally could, and drafted a silent exit plan. Not dramatic, not public, just decisive. Because while she was trying to control the optics, I was erasing the shared architecture. She'd built her leverage on a version of me that needed to win. But I didn't. I just needed to be done. It was day 8 when she finally showed up. No warning, no call ahead. Just a sharp knock at the door of the co-working space I'd moved into quietly 2 days prior. A temporary rental, private corner office, nothing with our company's name on it. She shouldn't have known I was there, but someone tipped her off. Jasper, maybe? Or one of the junior devs still loyal to her version of the story. I opened the door halfway and said nothing. She stood there in a black blazer, no makeup, hair pulled back like she wanted to look composed but non-threatening. Her eyes flicked past me, trying to map the room before I could shut her out. I just need 5 minutes, she said, voice tight with effort. Then I'll go. I didn't respond. I stepped aside, giving her no words, no welcome, just space. She walked in slowly, glancing at the folding desk, the laptop, the whiteboard covered in clean, new plans. No trace of the company we built. Just a quiet beginning she wasn't part of. She turned back to face me, arms crossed tight. You haven't said anything. Not one word. That's not fair. I leaned against the edge of the desk, arms at my sides, still silent. She paced once, then stopped, her voice rising just slightly. What do you want me to say? That it was a mistake? That I wasn't thinking clearly? That it didn't mean what it looked like? She swallowed. Because it didn't. I watched her calm. You don't get to freeze me out like this, she said, eyes flaring now. We built everything together. You don't just disappear and pretend none of it happened. I tilted my head slightly. Not mocking. Just registering. That night, she paused, her voice catching now. You walked out like you didn't care. Like I didn't matter. Like none of it mattered. I've been. Her throat tightened. I've been going crazy, waiting for the explosion that never came. The conversation. Something. Still, I said nothing. And that was when the crack showed. Her breath hitched. She folded her arms tighter across her chest. Say something, she whispered. Scream. Call me names. Tell me what I ruined. Just don't stand there like I'm not real. But I'd already said everything the moment I walked out without looking back. This wasn't about giving her closure. It wasn't about theater. I finally spoke, just one sentence. You're only powerful when I play. Her mouth opened, then closed. She left 5 minutes later. Didn't slam the door. Didn't cry. Didn't ask what came next. She just walked out like someone who'd finally realized they weren't part of the show anymore. And I didn't watch her leave. Because watching was still participation. and I was done giving her that. In the weeks that followed, I moved in silence. There was no dramatic press release, no social media unfollowing frenzy, no forwarded legal threats. Just a sequence of quiet exits. I surrendered my co-founder role. I let the board know, in clinical language, that I was stepping away to pursue other ventures. No blame, no emotion, just a clean detachment, the kind they couldn't argue with, the kind that said, "I'm not fighting. I'm finished." Ashley didn't respond directly, but I saw the ripple. Her tone in team updates shifted, less confident, more transactional. She stopped using phrases like, "We're aligned," and started over-explaining strategy. The energy of someone speaking into a vacuum, unsure who was still listening. Jasper stepped in more visibly after that. Showed up on investor calls, drafted long memos no one asked for. I ignored all of it. Because I wasn't trying to reclaim the house they built after pushing me out. I wasn't standing in the yard yelling that it was mine. I was already down the street, building something new. I opened a small LLC. Just my name on the paperwork. My code, my vision. No optics, no advisors, no pitch decks. I didn't need applause anymore. I needed integrity. And space. I slept better in the studio apartment above the design shop than I ever had in that 5-bedroom lie of a house. No soundproof walls, no curated spaces. Just plain white paint and a mattress on the floor. Honest, if nothing else. There were moments, small ones, when the weight hit. A familiar song playing in the background of a coffee shop. A dish at a restaurant she once called her favorite. The muscle memory of reaching for my phone to share something, then catching myself mid-motion. But those moments didn't define me. They passed like storms through a sky I'd stopped checking for approval. The hardest part wasn't losing the company. It wasn't the public silence. It was the private truth, that for years, I thought we were building together. That every late night, every contract signed, every victory celebrated over cheap champagne, it had all been genuine. But it wasn't. Not for her. And maybe that was the final revelation. Not that she betrayed me, but that I'd been loving a version of her that never truly existed. Just a performance calibrated to keep me invested, financially, emotionally, professionally. And when I stopped playing, the show ended. No curtain call. No applause. Just silence, which, in the end, said more than any confrontation ever could. 3 weeks after she left my office, she sent a final message. Just one line. "You really won't talk to me, will you?" I didn't respond. Not because I was angry, not even because I wanted her to feel abandoned, but because there was nothing left to say that wouldn't reopen what I'd already sutured shut. This wasn't about punishment. It was about preservation. She'd already burned the bridge. I just refused to stand on the ashes and reminisce. There's something unnerving to people like her about a wound that doesn't scream, just quietly closes, no longer feeding the drama she relied on. I could feel her reaching into the void, not because she missed me, but because she missed the feedback loop. The performance wasn't landing without a crowd. I started walking more. Not to clear my head, I wasn't in a fog anymore, but because I liked how concrete felt under my shoes. It reminded me of what didn't lie. The way sidewalks stayed hard, unforgiving, honest. One morning, I passed the old cafe we used to frequent on Thursdays. I paused at the corner, out of instinct more than nostalgia. I expected some pang, some cinematic ache in the chest. But there was nothing. Just the smell of burned espresso and a man coughing into his laptop across the patio. She wasn't everywhere anymore. She was becoming background noise, faded, like an echo in a building I no longer visited. My new project started gaining traction quietly. No investors, no buzz, just clean code and people I trusted. I worked without urgency, without seeking approval, without shaping everything to be presentation ready. It was the most honest thing I'd done in years. I didn't track what happened to her or the company. I heard fragments. Someone mentioned a restructure, a few layoffs, a new product line that wasn't gaining traction. I didn't chase the details. Letting go meant not clinging to the wreckage just to say I survived it. And I had survived it. Not untouched, but unbroken. The truth is, not every scar bleeds. Some just hum beneath the skin. Quiet reminders of what we saw too late, and what we'll never allow again. People asked me, once they found out, why I never confronted her publicly. Why I didn't sue, or fight for the company, or make her pay. They didn't understand the win. It wasn't about reclaiming a nameplate on an office door. It was about walking out with my dignity intact and my emotions no longer up for negotiation. Some people fracture under rage. She unraveled under silence. And that was always the difference between us. She needed the noise to survive. I'd learned to breathe in the quiet. The phone buzzed again that evening, another unknown number. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. At this point, the shape of her attempts was predictable. New number. Different tone. Some final attempt to provoke clarity, closure, anything that resembled a crack in my resolve. I watched the screen until it stopped buzzing. Then I turned it over. There's a moment that comes after betrayal. Not the immediate burn, but the long, low recognition that you are never going back. Not to the person. Not to the structure. Not even to the version of yourself that tolerated it. That moment came for me at 3:17 a.m., staring at the ceiling of the studio apartment, hearing nothing but the low whir of a ceiling fan and the echo of my own breath. It hit me then, not as rage, not even as grief, just a line drawn clearly in the mind. Even if she apologized now, even if she reversed the filings, even if she fell to pieces and told the whole world it was her fault, not mine, I still wouldn't go back. Because the part of me that once wanted to be chosen had stopped asking to be seen. And the silence? It wasn't punishment anymore. It was peace. I sat up, opened my laptop, and started writing. Nothing for business, nothing for pitch decks, just thoughts. Plain truths. The things I never said out loud because I was too busy being reasonable, supportive, careful not to be too emotional. That's what made her betrayal sting. It wasn't just that she misled me. It's that I defended her while she orchestrated the whole collapse. It's that I defended her while she set the fire. I protected her reputation, took meetings when she was late, softened her sharp decisions to the team, backed her choices even when I had doubts. And she used that trust like currency, then leveraged it against me in the name of strategy. That's why I didn't need revenge. She'd already lost the only thing she couldn't fabricate, my loyalty. She could spin narratives, reframe events, maybe even walk away with the company. But she'd never again hold a version of me that believed her word meant something. And that was irreversible. I closed the laptop, sat back. For the first time in months, I felt weightless. Not happy, not healed. A former colleague reached out the next week. Neutral tone, careful phrasing. Said he hoped things were settling, and that everyone was still rooting for both sides. I could hear the subtext. He knew, or had heard enough pieces to make assumptions. I kept it polite. Told him I was focused on new work, on moving forward. And I meant it. What surprised me wasn't the absence of drama. It was how easily I left the war she tried to start. There were no legal threats. No tabloid-worthy scenes. Just silence, and the slow, strategic removal of myself from everything she tried to entangle. She'd counted on my pride. On ego. On the expectation that I'd fight for my share, my voice, my place at the table. But she'd never really understood me. Not fully. I didn't need to burn the house down. I just needed to leave it. The one thing she never prepared for was the version of me who didn't need to win, only to walk. When you stop performing, the game ends. That was the difference between us. She thought betrayal was the climax of a drama. I saw it as the end of a contract. No appeal. No reshoots. Just exit. I moved my belongings out of storage that weekend. No helpers. No photos. Just me, sorting through the remnants of what I'd kept when I left. Most of it was equipment, notebooks, some old prototypes from early days. But buried in one box was the first prototype we built together. A simple hardware shell we pitched in a cafe to an angel investor who laughed us out of the room. Back then, we were partners. She made the vision sound big. I made it real. And maybe that was the lesson. Some people talk about dreams. Some people build them. But if your co-builder is already shopping for other investors while you're still soldering wires, then the dream was never shared. It was staged. I kept the prototype. Not because I missed us, but because it reminded me who I was before the noise. Before the staged synergy. Before the betrayal dressed in business plans. And with it in my hands I finally understood, she didn't steal the company. She stole the illusion of partnership. And I'd rather lose the brand than lose the blueprint of who I am. That wasn't defeat. It was clarity.